Several guests from academia, civil society, business and the faith sector converged for an online rally to share messages of support for the Defend Our Democracy campaign and the Constitutional Court, which will soon rule on the Zondo Commission's contempt of court matter against former President Jacob Zuma. The campaign is a movement mobilizing South Africans to protect the Constitution. Among the attendees were former Public Protector Thuli Madonsela, South African award-winning playwright John Carney, music icon Yvonne Chaka Chaka and former South African rugby player Brian Habana. The campaign is rooted in the belief that the year 1994 brought about promise and heightened expectations, but some of that hope has been dashed by those entrusted with building the country. But to get a sense of what emerged from the virtual rally, we have asked one of its conveners, Nicole Fritz, to join us now, and she is on Zoom from Johannesburg. Nicole, a very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to The Globe.
Good evening, Simpiwe. Thank you very much for having me on the show this evening.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's great having you on the show this evening, Nicole. Before we get to the crux of this conversation, let's talk about the mandate of the Defend Our Democracy campaign, what it seeks to achieve, and whether today's rally, or rather the deliberations in today's rally, were anything near to achieving those goals.
All right. I think the campaign brings together thousands of individuals, a huge number of organizations, and it has come about in response to concern for this moment in our constitutional democracy, believing that our constitution and the institutions that are intended to uphold it, like the Constitutional Court, our judiciary, are under attack, and that those attacks are emanating from self-interested parties who don't wish to be held accountable, and because there are these serious allegations that power has been used and abused for personal enrichment and not to secure a better life for all. So this is a campaign that I think brings together South Africans from all walks of life across the country, really to sort of regenerate a belief and optimism in our constitution and our constitutional democracy and what it is intended to bring about, which is improvement of the lives of all South Africans.
Now, Nicole, is the movement, or rather the formation of this movement, was it informed by the reaction to former President Jacob Zuma's defiance of a Constitutional Court order to appear before the Zondo Commission?
Well, it is. That is certainly one of our concerns, that a former president who has occupied so powerful a position, who has been entrusted with such weighty responsibilities under our constitution, and has enjoyed all the privileges and the highest powers that it can bestow, would now, when he is asked to appear and give some account to the South African public, would refuse to adhere to the authority of the Commission, would refuse to adhere to its summons. And in fact, when the Commission goes to the Constitutional Court and asks for an order, which the Constitutional Court then gives, saying that the former president must in fact obey and adhere to the Commission's authority, its summonses, well, then former President Zuma fails to obey the Constitutional Court, the highest court in the land, a court which the founder of our democracy, President Mandela, in fact, said was an institution upon which our democracy hinged. That was how important it was. And it seems to be that we are having this this example from somebody who has enjoyed such powerful position, saying that he doesn't obey, he will not observe equality before the law. He expects to be treated differently, and of course, that undermines and seeks to subvert everything that our constitutional democracy and its values hold dear.
Let's talk about some of the key takeaways from today's rally. What came out of it, and what kind of concerns were raised with regards to the matters that are being pursued?
Well, I think that obviously, there were a lot of concerns about this particular moment. I think there was an emphasis that the widespread looting and corruption that we have seen doesn't just mean that certain individuals are enriched and are protected in ways that is completely unjustifiable. But that enrichment, that protection, comes at the cost of ordinary South Africans, and most especially the poorest and most vulnerable. Take away the state's resources, put them in your own bank accounts, and there is far less funds to realize the Constitution's promises in respect of healthcare, in respect of education, in respect of housing, in respect of social security. And I think that there was an underlining of that concern. But I think it was also a joyous and an optimistic occasion. You've spoken about the people who participated, people like music legend Yvonne Chaka Chaka, like our great actor and playwright John Carney. And it was just, as I said, it was intended to kind of regenerate optimism and belief in what our Constitution and its promises, if realized, can provide.
All right, let's talk about the power of defend democracy. What kind of power does it have? Does it have legal power? Does it have the power to influence? And if so, who is it aimed at influencing?
Well, I think it's very much a message to South Africans that the cost of a constitutional democracy is eternal vigilance. There is a requirement that we not be passive observers, that we must all play our part. I think, and some of that is fairly nuanced. So one of the messages of today's rally was that we can soon await the Constitutional Court handing down judgment in this matter. It will determine whether, in fact, former President Zuma is guilty of contempt, and if so, whether he should go to jail. We don't know what the outcome will be. Regardless of that outcome, even if we disagree with it, and we are perfectly entitled to disagree with it, we must respect the judgments of the courts. And this is what constitutionalism and rule of law demands. I think it was very much about conscientizing, reawakening South Africans to what their responsibilities and duties are as active citizens in this constitutional democracy that has certainly not realized all that is promised, but does hold out this incredible promise and the promise of a better life for all.
Is the Defend Our Democracy movement part of the groups that are opposed to the radical economic transformation agenda within the ANC that has thrown their weight behind former President Jacob Zuma?
Well, the Defend Our Democracy campaign obviously is composed of a huge number of organizations and ordinary South Africans, from all walks of life, across the board. It doesn't have any particular political affiliation. It doesn't participate or partake in any way in this type of factionalism. And to some extent, defend our democracy, meaning defend our Constitution, realize the promise of the Constitution is about economic transformation. There can be no realization of the Constitution's promise without economic transformation. But certainly we know that those who identify themselves as radical economic transformation supporters are those who often find themselves in alignment with former President Jacob Zuma. And he does represent one of the signal most critical crises for our constitutional democracy at this point. By saying he will not observe the authority of the Commission, he will give the public of South Africa no account. And then by saying he will not respect the orders of the Constitutional Court, he will make no appearance there, even when the Constitutional Court goes above and beyond and says, give us an affidavit, tell us whether you think there should be a sanction imposed if you are guilty of contempt and what that sanction should be. Even then, he says, no, I'm not engaging with you through legal means. I will issue a public statement. It will contain these malicious and defamatory allegations against you, but I will not engage in a legal process. And I think that throws up a major challenge to our constitutional democracy. And certainly we are very, very conscious of that challenge.
And so much has been said, Nicole, about those individuals who are alleged to be looting the state and violating the country's constitution. So are you also of the sense that the country's authorities, the law enforcement officers and, the judiciary perhaps is dysfunctional in terms of bringing those to book, in terms of curbing corruption, and in particular the ANC government? Do you think they are doing enough, or they failed in their mandate of curbing the corruption, the scourge of corruption in South Africa?
Well, I think that there has been a failure to combat the scourge of corruption. We certainly want to see a reversal of that and for there to be accountability. I think what has happened during the years of state capture is that there has not only been this corruption and looting of state resources for the enrichment and prosperity of a very few, but there has also been capturing of various critical institutions to ensure that there is protection of those who would engage in corruption and looting. And we have to reverse that. And I think that there has been, there've been some moves, there is momentum. We certainly would want to see more for that reversal to happen. As for the judiciary, I think, and this was certainly a message that came out of today's rally, the judiciary has often been the last check on the kind of corruption and looting and capture that we've seen over the last decade. And I think the judiciary is to be applauded for that role. That's not universal. Certainly there have been exceptions. And we need to bear in mind Madiba's message that, at the inauguration of the Constitutional Court, judges wield awesome power. They are, in the last resort, the final persons who will interpret and realize fundamental rights contained in our Constitution. But when they err, they must be held accountable. And so whilst we are saying in this campaign, we must respect the independence of the judiciary, and there should be no unjustified, malicious, false attacks on the judiciary, at the same time, we're also saying the judiciary, when they err, must be held to account. And that is a consequence of them wielding the awesome power that they do.
What do you think is the danger, Nicole Fritz, of forming a movement around a certain personality or character? What if that what if that particular person or character is out of the picture? Will that particular movement continue pushing the mandate of protecting the Constitution, or would it just be the end of the road for this movement?
Well, certainly there is reference to the example of former President Jacob Zuma, and I've referred to him, and that is because we think he is an exemplar. He is one of the most critical examples of the type of threats that we face to our constitutional democracy at this particular point in time. But certainly that threat is not exclusive to former President Zuma. And as I said, whilst at this particular moment, because there are such high-pitched attacks being made against the judiciary and against the Constitutional Court, we need to be vigilant about that. We understand that the attacks go beyond that, and that an active citizenry, understanding the promise of the Constitution and what needs to happen in order for that promise to be realized, that is a larger process. Okay. And that is certainly something that the campaign, as it unfolds, and it's an organic process, as it unfolds, we'll look to focus on and explore.
All right, Nicole Fritz, one of the conveners for Defend Our Democracy, speaking to us live via Zoom from Johannesburg. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.